Dawn Kirk, and I am here today with Karen from Cobalt, and we are going to learn a little bit more about what she's got going on. There's some really great things happening in her advocacy work that I would like to learn about, and I thought you might too. So, welcome, Karen. What would you like to tell us about the great things that are happening at Cobalt?
Hi, Dawn. Thanks so much for inviting me to join you today. So I am, yes, Karen Middleton. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the president of Cobalt. We are a statewide reproductive rights organization. And so the kind of things we work on are policy, advocacy, education in the community, civic outreach, and we also run an abortion fund, which provides access to reproductive health care for people who need it. And we help pay for their care and also pay for their travel. And what I'm really excited about that we're doing this year is that I am co-chair of Coloradans for Protecting Reproductive Freedom. That is a ballot measure and issue committee. And I am co-chairing that along with Dusty Garrelay, who is president over at COLOR, the Colorado Organization for Latina Opportunity and Reproductive Rights. And we are working to put a measure on the ballot this year that will, and voting on it in November, that will work to protect the right to access abortion and to remove an unfair barrier that has been on the books for a little while. So it's a very busy year in this work and in this moment, particularly if you watch the headlines here and particularly across the state.
Wow, it's that you said a lot in a little bit of time, and so I can only imagine how your hair is barely like staying out of fire right now with all that going on. It's such important work, and I am really grateful that you have your eyes on this and you're really trying to find a way to talk about it at that state level to make sure that we're getting what we need from people all over the state. So, what is going to be on the ballot measure? You said that there were some barriers, and I'm just trying to figure out what those are. So, tell me more.
Well, and I'll back up a little bit to say, I'll back up and start here. Is that Colorado was the first state in the country to decriminalize abortion all the way back in 1960. And that was a bipartisan effort. It was signed into law by a Republican governor. And Colorado generally has this vibe of government out of my business, right? Western values, we are in cowboys and big open spaces. It's part of where Cobalt came from. It's like fundamental and clear blue skies, right? So for many years, we have seen a state that has had really not very many restrictions and no protections. And there's been this coalition for reproductive health, rights, and justice that's been working together because we've been faced with a number of attempts to put personhood on the ballot and to pass laws that are home. So we started back in '08 with a personhood ballot measure. We continued in 2010. 2014 and again in 2020, where there were folks who put something onto the ballot and said, let's restrict abortion here in Colorado. And time again, voters said, oh, hell no, we're not interested in your government restrictions. And this coalition has been part of those campaigns for a number of years. Meanwhile, every year at the legislature, we since about 2010, we have seen a flurry of bills, maybe a flood. And even just last week, we saw two more bills, one that tried to create personhood and another one that's just trying to ask you to read information about procedure that's needed. So there's been this undercurrent of stuff going on. And in that backdrop, we saw that last ballot measure in 2020 that was trying to restrict abortion after 22 weeks. And it was the middle of COVID. So I call that the Zoom campaign. We ran a whole campaign on Zoom. And once again, the other folks thought they really had it. They're like, ooh, this is in the mushy middle. I'm sure we'll win. And they lost handily. 59% of Colorado voters said, no, we don't want any government interference. And kind of the main message that we hear from voters is that the decision about when and whether to have access to abortion should be, or whether you have an abortion should be between the person who's pregnant, their spouse, their family, their doctor, their faith, and that pulls extremely high. Like none of my, it's not your business. You and I should be telling some third person what they think. And then if you add the sentence and not politicians, it's even more funny. In other words, they don't want political people saying we're going to restrict or not restrict. So that's kind of the backdrop. And so a year after that, we started talking about let's proactively protect this right in the Constitution and remove the barrier. So what is the barrier? Well, back in 1984, we passed by less than 1% a measure that said we don't want any state dollars being used around abortion. That was the way they wrote it. What it meant is there are about 1 million covered lives in Colorado who are state employees or work for a college or university whose insurance won't allow them to pay for abortion, which is really right. So I was a legislator. I had a baby in 2008. Had I needed an abortion, my Kaiser coverage through the state would not have paid for it. Yet, if I worked in a private company with Kaiser, same plan, I would be able to make that decision for myself and my family without my employer telling me that they can't cover. And so what we're doing is removing this old language, because when you make a change to the Constitution, you can either just take something out, just put something in, or you take something out, put something new in, and that's where. So it's a pretty it's an interesting moment, and I could go on to share the language if you'd like me to. I can tell you what that ballot measure actually says, which might be.
I would love to hear more. I know that the petitions are all over the place right now, so it's helpful for people to know what's on there so that they know what they're signing.
That's all right, yeah.
And to know what to look for in case there's something else out there that's not the right petition.
Absolutely. Well, and I was talking to Fort Collins was the part of the state to exceed our goal for signatures, that we have to collect signatures in each of 35 state Senate districts. And I want to say you were among the first in the state to really collect enough signatures. So bravo. But so here's the language that we wrote. It's proposed initiative 89, and we are in fact gathering signatures. We're going to be gathering signatures until the middle of April when we'll turn them in. And it's very simple and straightforward. It says a change to the Colorado Constitution recognizing the right to abortion and in connection therewith prohibiting the state and local governments from denying, impeding, or discriminating against the exercise of that right, allowing abortion to be a covered service under self-insurance plans, Colorado state and local government employees, and enrollees in state and local governmental insurance programs. And so it really does a couple of things. One is we have, and we passed in 2022, the Reproductive Health Equity Act. In statute, we do have protection for whether the decision whether or not to have an abortion is yours and yours alone, and nothing will impede that. But it is in statute, and with any election, we could lose who's in control at the governor's level or at either of the legislative chambers, and we could really risk losing this, and we have seen that over time. And there are some other ballot measures out there that are trying to change right now what's going on, which could change our governor in as little as 2 years, which to me is pretty scary. We also, I've had this job for more than 10 years. And when I started doing this work, people would say, now think about it. We had Obama for president. We had Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. We were in a much different time. And most people believe that this was a subtle issue. So now we're in a position where we don't know who's going to be the next elected officials, although we know who we want. And we don't know, we know that the Supreme Court is not with us right now and probably won't be for some time. So we're really operating in different waters than just a few years ago. So, and I did say we're working to get all of our signatures in and turned in by April 25th. That really means we're going to ask our volunteers and other people to get those turned in earlier so that we can make sure that everyone is accounted for. And it really is important that we collect signatures from each part of the state, 2% from each state Senate district. And then we have to pass this by at least 55%. So a few years ago, voters said, we want to make it harder to change the Constitution. I know that we take it very seriously, that we are making a change, and that we are really communicating with voters all across the state of Colorado to make sure that they understand what they're signing, that they're comfortable with it, and that we're going to give everyone a chance to vote on this in November. So we're pretty excited about where we are in the process. And that was a lot, so I bet you might have.
That's so good. So one of the things I heard that might be a way for people to get involved is to volunteer. Is that true? Do you need volunteers?
Absolutely. And I will tell you, we have had a lot of volunteers. Over 1,000 individuals have already been trained to collect signatures. We can always use more. And if you Google Coloradans Protecting Reproductive Freedom, we have a website up, and there is a list of everywhere you can sign up to train to be a volunteer. You can participate in events and activities. And that is kind of our one-stop shop for getting, learning more. And we've had a number of events. We had our first event in Fort Collins all the way back on January 17th, which was fabulous. We just did something at the Lyric recently. And we continue to have volunteer-led events and activities all throughout. So we've been really active in the Collins community and the northern metro area, and we're really proud of that.
That's great. And that may explain why we got our signatures faster than anyone else. I think we might be a little competitive, but now that we've got ours,
I like it. I'll take
we can
it.
help, right? I mean, it's not as if you're limited to be a volunteer in your neighborhood, right? This is something where you could get involved and make a day of it somewhere else, which is really fantastic. Yeah. So what else is it that people need to know?
Well, let me just say, we could really use people in more rural communities and smaller population communities. So northeastern and northwestern corners of Colorado, it's state Senate District 1 and 35. So if you think about the map of Colorado outside of the metro areas, you can always use more. Other ways that you can get involved. I mean, it's always time, treasure, and talent, right? So you could also host a house party or a gathering over coffee to invite one of our campaign volunteers or staffers to come share information about the campaign and why it's important. We think this is really a community-based campaign, and each of the 7 organizations that form the original coalition and each of the organizations that have signed on are really thinking about this as something we're doing in the community. So the League of Women Voters is very active. There are lots of local groups that have signed on and said, how can we, which has been really terrific. And then we have, I guess I would say, if you are part of a local organization, that positions on ballot measures, we would invite you to bring this to your organization to sign on as an endorser, for example, so that your organization can help be part of this. Of course, financial support is always welcome. And one of the neat things about this campaign is that it really is very grassroots. We've already got, I mentioned, over 1,000 volunteers. We've already got over 1,300 individual donations from Coloradans from all walks of life in all parts of the state. And so even a small donation helps us with the campaign process. And it's very expensive to do the signature gathering because while we might have volunteers out on the doors and talking to voters, we still have to have a professional firm that's reviewing them and making sure that everything is accurate when we turn it in. So it's a very important piece of the process. And I'll just tell you a little story. Just last week, I spent a whole week in southern and western Colorado. So I left Denver last Monday ahead of the storm, a week ago Monday, drove down to Pueblo, and I had an event every night for 7 nights, from Pueblo to Alamosa to Cortez. I popped back to Durango. I went up to Montrose. We went to Telluride in between. and then we went to Grand Junction, and then the last stop was Aspen, although I couldn't stay for that one. And what was really cool was in each community, we had people bringing in signatures. We had people coming to learn more who were learning about it for the first time. It was really very exciting, but the level of enthusiasm and interest was really cool. So whether you are, a lot of people have been doing like a wine and sign or something like that, or just having a group and inviting someone to share about the most. So those are some ways that people can get in.
I love it. I love the phrase wine and sign. I hadn't heard that before. I'm like, oh, I'm going to use that. I'm sure. So I,
I'm with you.
yeah. And you know what I love too is that, there's lots of great reasons to go all over the state. People could follow your lead as far as like volunteering and getting to make, some fun experiences out of it. We do live in this state where even though some of our areas have very different ways of doing it, one of those things that has been pretty consistent across the state is like that rugged individualism, right? This is one of these topics that is actually so interesting to me that we continue to see that, like, no matter how strongly Coloradans speak up, we keep having to keep saying it. And so, it should be fun to get to talk to people who just want to sign and get involved. And so hopefully there are some other people who can help get those signatures in the next few weeks as we turn the corner. So what happens after the signatures? What else are you working on? What else will be next? Because this is a huge lift, but then there's more.
Well, we will, once on the ballot, which I am sure it will, we will then move into really talking to voters through the summer and fall. And we do a few things. It would be just like if you were thinking about a candidate campaign, making sure the voters know that this is on the ballot, figuring out where they are on this issue, giving them a good reason to join us in voting yes, or if they've already said they will vote yes, kind of stick with us, and then to make sure they get out to vote in the fall. So there will be opportunities for a continued series of house parties and outreach for voter contact. And that could be phone banking, which you can often do. And that's one of the beauties of post-COVID or semi-post-COVID, depending on your mood around that, virtual phone banking, which is a kind of a blast because you can sit in your own house with your phone and your computer. And sometimes the phone banking will include a special guest who hops on and thanks you for making those calls. And then you can make calls and then you can stop and ask questions. And it also, phone calls can be isolating. So if you've got a group of people doing it at the same time, you can share your successes. So virtual phone bank is always kind of a hoot. We will be walking doors and doing all of that. And then the other thing to remember is there are many other candidates and campaigns that are extremely important. And we need to make sure that we are turning out voters. I know that the folks who come out in support of this issue often stay with us and vote the ticket. It's also a bipartisan issue. We have lots of folks from all three parties. I would say a lot of unaffiliated voters and Republican voters join us on this, in addition to really seeing Democrats fairly consistently voting. So it's just something that I think can bring people together, and there are. Now, while that campaign is going on, let me tell you a little bit about other work Cobalt is. Colorado is one of the states that does not have restrictions on functional limits for abortion care. And so we have long been the place that people come to from other states if they need access to an abortion and they can't get it in their home state. That need has gone up exponentially because states have been banning abortion or reducing access to abortion or making it impossible. And so they've been coming here. We passed a field law last year in 2023, and my visual is it's sort of like the Star Wars field, right? The field is up across our state borders, and anyone who comes to Colorado who needs help to access abortion, we protect patients, providers, and assisters. So that means you help drive someone, you help pay for someone, you help provide the care, whatever it is. We help you if you come to Colorado. And the need is so great. And it is changing so many lives for people who are in states that have zero access. So whether it's the story of the person who didn't know they were pregnant, and then by the time they found out it's not legal in their state, to, we had a woman with an ectopic pregnancy right after the Dobbs decision, meaning the pregnancy was growing in the fallopian tube, and she had to put her husband and 2 kids in a car, and they had to drive 19 hours from Texas to reach a doctor who could take care of that. And you cannot carry an ectopic pregnancy. There's no way to save it or move it. The anti-abortion folks love to talk about that, but that is a life-threatening situation. And I can tell you that not only was it nerve-wracking for that family, but the doctor knew that this family was driving to her, and she was sweating it out for a day and a half, thinking, if that pregnancy ever has a problem driving, have you driven between Texas and Colorado? I mean, there's so many places where there's not a hospital, there's no way to get help, and it can be life-threatening. So those sorts of situations are happening on a daily basis. And we are seeing an explosion in the number of people who need the care. And Colorado has become a real reliable place whose doors are open and we will help. And so our abortion fund is one of a few that can really help provide that support. And we provide both for the procedural care, but we also provide practical support. So if someone says, I need to come to Colorado, and I need help, or I need to come to Denver from Fort Collins or from Salida to Alamosa or whatever it is, we help patients, whether they live in Colorado and they don't have a bus fare or a car ride or a hotel, or they're coming from somewhere else. And so it's a really important time. And I just encourage folks to sort of pay attention to them, because consistent protection without fear of retribution means that we're a place people are moving to help provide this care. And we are really stepping up so that not only are Coloradans getting their health care needs met, but other people who need our help will get that too. And this ballot measure can expand that help. If you think about it, if you're a state employee and we pass this, you're able to use your own insurance for what rightfully is care and your own decision, which is really a matter of fairness. And we can continue to support people who are coming from other places. So we really see the social justice in this.
Yeah, wow. Some really sobering experiences. And I'm relieved to know that you have so much great work and experience, doing this, so that it's not, other places they're trying to figure this out. And so I'm grateful that you're ahead of that curve. And obviously things have escalated in, intensity, and the need is greater. But having the experience and the foundation makes it so that you can scale up instead of having to try to scramble. And that's saving lives, which is a big deal to me. And I'm just really glad that people can get what they need here. It's a beautiful place to come to get healing and to make sure that we're saving lives in this way. Just makes sense to me, right? I mean, I don't know. I guess because I am from here, I believe I get to decide. And it's hard enough for me to decide what I need to do with all sorts of things, right? Like, it's there's enough to think about whenever you have something going on with your healthcare. It's already enough. We do not need to make it any harder.
Well, and it's so, I'm sorry.
No.
I was just going to say, it's so interesting because a lot of the laws that people try to pass try to make it sound like we don't know what we're doing. Gosh, if we just give you some information that we're going to make the doctor read. Gosh, if you just had a waiting period because we're not sure that you know your mind, right? And we know our minds. And as you said, we might think about what we want to do and take seriously our decision. But once we've made the decision, don't tell me I didn't make my own decision, right? That's a little bit of the narrative. And other people will say, well, gosh, why are you focused on abortion? Isn't it good enough that we've got a statute of protection? I want to just say, look at what's happening across the country. And it's the A states that are particularly in my sights this month. So first of all, in Alabama, they decided that IVF is an issue. And we've always known if you create personhood assisted reproductive technologies would be at risk. And then in Arizona, just last week, apparently every Republican in the Arizona state legislature voted against the bill to protect access to, wait for it, birth control. And so this agenda of the other side is not just to stop abortion, but to really stop the range of access to reproductive health care. And they don't stop, right? We passed Dobbs at the Supreme Court level. So not only do we need to protect our right to make our own decisions, we also see there's a slippery slope. And if we say no to one thing, it becomes no to 6 other things. And the idea that we're threatening birth control and in vitro fertilization in some states, which sounds outrageous. And then they're like, no, we didn't mean that. Oh, that's okay. It's like, no, you did mean it, and you just didn't realize what kind of blowback you would get. So anyway, I offer that as just some of the complexities we see, and it's part of why we are standing so firm on the ground for him right now.
Yeah, I hear these things. It's a drip. Living here, I can get through a day without hearing some of these things. And yet, every time I do, I'm having this reaction that I have right now. I have young adult and teen children, and I am furious. I try real hard not to swear right now because it's not okay that I had more rights than they did. And I grew up at a time when I didn't feel like I had a lot of great rights, right? Like it's not as if I thought that I had everything. I was still working to have equity and equality, right? I mean, I grew up as a young woman who wasn't allowed to do certain things still, or barely allowed to. And I just think of like the world that I've raised my kids in is a world where they have so much more information and access. We have better technology. We can do things all over the place that make such a difference, right? My husband at one point had brain cancer, and the kind of tumor that he had would have been deadly if he had gotten treatment here in one place instead of another. And that's how fast the technology changes, how fast we figure out how to do something. And so on one hand, we have people who are working and they make it their life's work to find ways to take care of people and to solve these problems. And any doctor who's ever had to deal with somebody who's faced an ectopic pregnancy or a miscarriage or anything else, or anyone who's been in that situation or had friends in that situation that they've cared for, I mean, it's ridiculous and obscene and gross to me that we have anybody who thinks that they get to decide that for me. I'm not okay with that. And I'm certainly not okay with it for my kids, because that is what I worked for. And so to know that we've rolled back from that isn't okay. To know that as it is, getting in to see people get care and figure out what you need and how to do it and how to pay for it and all those things, that's enough. That's more than enough. Figuring out how you're going to take care of your family, all of that, how you're going to have kids or not have kids. You know what? We don't have rules just to stop people from being dumb on anything else, right? So even if I did do something because I was dumb, so what? Right? Like, we allow it all over the place. Look at this topic we're talking about right now. Some of this is just dumb. Some of the people who are eating this up and parroting these things are doing it based off of bad information and horrible science. And you hear these things that go, gosh, how can anyone believe that? And yet it's what's out there. Meanwhile, we've got people who know better, doing better. And I am so proud of us for being a place that has done that well for LGBTQ rights, for kids, for families, for parents who have kids who have any sort of needs. And in this case, there's enough. We have so much in front of us that requires us to, figure out we do not need to add barriers.
Mm-hmm.
There's already enough of those. And so I'm grateful for you to be looking ahead and going, yep, we need to take care of that. And I am really hopeful that we can keep the momentum going that we've built here in northern Colorado to say, yeah, let's keep this going. Let's do those house parties and the sign and sips and the coffees, and make sure that all of our neighbors know how important this is and why we're doing it. And also, you know what? Here's what I love about this. We are saying that this allows people to make their own decision. We're not making moral judgments. We're not telling people what to believe or what not to believe. We are just purely saying that what I believe isn't what somebody else has to be ruled by. And I think that that's a big deal. I mean, that is important. Yep. We've made all these advances. We need to be able to support people. And it's 2024. I just checked the calendar because I was like, I'm going to say that right? It is 2024. Like, I mean, there's no reason that we should be even debating this, let alone having to try to save our friends and loved ones' lives because they don't live here. That's the most ridiculous thing. And so I'm grateful for you having having your eye on this for us and helping us know what we need to take action on, because it can be overwhelming. I will say that, it's hard. It's hard to know that where we're at with this right now, but I have so much hope when I hear that there is this great work happening and that there is something that I can do. There is a way that I can get involved. There is, I know people want to hear about this. They just need to hear it in a way that is easy to hear, right? And so I'm glad you helped us understand more of it for those of us who might have been not following the news for a little while. So is there anything else
I would just say caution, don't follow every piece of news all the time or you can't handle it. And being able to listen and learn from you is a great break from some of the basket of horribles that we're facing. So I'm really glad you mentioned it. I'm sitting next to a 15-year-old whose entire reproductive life is going to be determined by Justice Gorsuch, Justice, and the other two. I'll just call them the three awfuls that have been installed, and I just worry every day about that. So I'm so glad that you're covering this, and then just really you got to keep up the hope, and you've got to engage where it matters, and I think it does matter. It's a generational issue in so many ways. So thank you for giving us some time today for me to get a chance to visit with you.
Thank you. So for anyone who wants to get involved, the website again is Colorado.
So it's Coloradans for reproductivefreedom.com.org. But if you just Google Coloradans Protecting Reproductive Freedom, I know it's a mouthful, you will find us. And we have a website. We're available on social media. But the website lists all of the events, all of the activities, and most importantly, how you can volunteer, how you can set up, sign up and get in.
Awesome. And then Cobalt Advocates is the website of your organization, which is where people can get more involved in helping people and kind of the big picture piece, the stuff that goes before and after all of the bill work. I'm really glad that you're doing what you're doing, and I can't wait to celebrate in November when all your hard work pays off, because all of our listeners have jumped in and done a little bit, because that's all it takes is just a little bit from all of us, and we can help make sure that this is safe for everyone and not just us. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Karen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Dawn. It was great to visit with you. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.
Paid for by the Larimer County Democratic Party, 604 South Mason Street, Fort Collins, Colorado, 80524. 970-689-6391. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.